Well, today is day 30 of 44 days of transforming grief. I'm in California. I was looking for a quiet spot this afternoon to give you a short summary of this radio show that I did with Lee Forrest Knowlton in 2010. We talked about a lot of different things. Lee and her family had always had a connection to grief, to talking about grief, to understanding the power of this exploration as part of life. And they had been of service by being connected with hospice, by studying ways of communication, of alternative healing. So some of the conversations we had were about AIDS, AIDS patients in the 80s. And Lee was she's trained as a massage therapist, as an acupuncturist, and as a lifelong journaler. Was journaling since the age of 14 and continues to do that. We also talked about when her mother got sick and died and how they talked about the dying process during that time. And in that conversation, Lee shared about a book, a journaling exercise that she had created called Doors to Myself, Journaling the Journey. And it was a way for someone who was dying, or if you have a loved one, where you have these deeper conversations, or it might be a conversation about their life, journaling their legacy. And then we also talked about how becoming the crone in your family, becoming the wisdom keeper. And partly that brought up for me that both my parents are still alive. They're in their 80s. And then I had an aunt and uncle who also I consider that generation ahead of me. And my aunt died last year. My dad had a stroke. He and my mom are very focused on healthcare for my dad. And my uncle is in a place where he has pretty much round the clock care. And so even though they're still alive, there is this kind of anticipatory grief. This last year, I felt myself stepping into the position of being the matriarch in my family. I have 3 adult daughters. My husband has died, and there's been this place of finding my identity, finding the connection and how I can support them on their life. So this was a really rich show with a wide variety of topics. And the other thing that brought up for me when I was listening to the show, and I'll put the radio show link in there when I go back inside, is, there's a point in grieving, there's a point in loss where you can begin to ask, what good has come out of this? What good has come out of the process, whether it is birth or death, loss of identity? And one of the things Lee and I talked about was how the AIDS epidemic in the 80s really brought to the forefront alternative methods of healing, partly because they were working. There were things that could be done. When I was in the throes of my autoimmune condition, acupuncture was one of the things that balanced out the effects of the medication that I was on. So I was just curious about that and reflecting that when there's something that we're grieving the loss of, what is the good that's coming out of it? And you don't really think about that when you're in the depth of the raw feelings. But there is a point where you can reflect on that. All right, so if you have any things you want to comment about, there's maybe this brought up something for you, or if you listen to the radio show, to comment and let us know where you feel the connection. All right, thanks for stopping by.